Hello, everybody. Sounded like a bit of a children's TV
It's
program there.
challenge.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. I'm Faye, co-founder of Project Woman TV, where we discuss everything relating to women, from sex to periods to men, the planet, everything. We've got a great guest today, but I'm going to let my co-host Abby introduce her. Over to you, Abby.
Why, thank you, Fun Faye. Hello, gorgeous humans. As you know, I am Abby. I am a female founder of the community and collective that is Project Woman, and co-founder with this wonderful woman. I always keep doing this and it always points
I'm
to
here.
I know you're over there. Our guest today, who I got to meet whilst networking with other great women, is the gorgeous Joanne Harding. Joanne is a Labour Party councillor and has represented the ward of Urmston, her hometown, for the past 12 years. She is currently the executive lead for culture, leisure, poverty and domestic abuse. She has a genuine passion and commitment to the violence against women and girls agenda and works politically at a regional and national level in this area of work. She's also led on menopause support community initiatives and wants every woman to feel empowered to ask for what they need during this time in their lives. Joanne feels that women in positions of influence should always be throwing the ladder down to other women and supporting them to aspire and achieve. She is mum to daughter Grace and Ted, the Border Terrier. And when not doing politics, she is running or reading. I just want to go back to throwing the ladder down.
Yes.
Oh, do you know what? When I read things like this, like my heart starts dancing. And I wanted to ask, so why politics? I mean, I think you've said it all in that bio there. I mean, that is it, isn't it? It's the ladder, the opportunity to throw that ladder to other women that don't even know that ladder exists.
Yeah, indeed. And I think for me, people have a fear of politics or what they think politics is. But I know so many women do politics with a small p every day of their lives. What you are doing is politics with the, Project Woman, because you are changing policy around women's health. You are informing women about what options they have available to them around their health that matters. You are doing politics. You are helping to shape a better world for women and influencing policy. So what I try to do is demystify the word politics. You get women that do litter picking, they're school governors, they do all kinds of stuff in their community. They are doing politics. So I try to demystify some of that. And then if they want to have a more formal role in politics, then I'd like to help them get the first step on the ladder to doing that, really.
Do you know what? This comes down to, I feel, and there are, with every conversation, there are different avenues. But what I feel I don't do politics, comes from that misunderstanding of female intelligence. Because not so long ago, we weren't allowed to vote. Not so long ago, we couldn't have our own bank account. Not so long ago, we actually wasn't allowed to practice medicine on our own bodies. And so we don't do because we wasn't allowed, and that still echoes through. And I feel, coming back to your ladders, when we look at, I mean, I always refer back to Indian philosophy and caste because of what I study with yoga, but we have the same here, right? We've got working class, we've got middle class, we've got upper class, and those ladders, they've got different rungs, haven't they, depending on what class you come into.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I found, which makes me sad, but I also do get it. So I'm a councillor, okay, never expected to be elected as a councillor. I joined the Labour Party when I'd had my daughter because I thought I can't keep shouting from the sidelines and being pissed off about what's going on in the world. I need to do something about it. So I joined the party, and my gran was a massive Thatcher hater. So I was brought up with the whole kind of, you've got to vote Labour, and she'd drag us to the polling station. So I knew how to vote from a very early age. But I became a councillor. It's a more formal role, and I've grown into it over 12 years. There's a lot to learn. It was a real baptism of fire. But people have a perceived view of me, that I'm some middle-class woman. And when I tell them that I didn't go to university at all, I left school at 16 and started working as a veterinary nurse. I came from a council estate in Longside. My dad was an alcoholic. I was brought up by my gran, who was just amazing and was a real positive, strong role model in my life. And then from working, I did various different jobs, left veterinary nursing, qualified as an addiction therapist because of my dad's addiction and my brother's, and then stumbled into politics and have achieved things. But people have this view because I'm a councillor. Oh, she's a middle-class woman who's this, that, and the other. And actually, when it comes down to conversations and I say who I am, because I don't feel I have to tell that to everybody, because it doesn't matter. But when I do tell my story, they're a bit like, oh. So there are real, normal politicians out there. Yes, there are. And it's a bit like, you know, if I can help you navigate some of that and consider a career in politics, then, you know, let's have a chat.
Again, so picking up on what you said there, so basically this form of judgment, and we all do it, especially when it comes to politics. You know, when we read the newspapers and we see, you know, it's a very superficial conversation as to what actually goes on and what you and many of these constituents and MPs actually do on a day-to-day basis. But I feel that it represents this time poor mentality because we only read the surface. We only ever read the surface. But if you get to know someone and something, you get to understand exactly where they're coming from. And again, everything always comes back to not only women's health. You know, I'm very interested in this inclusive conversation, which includes women, females, humans with wombs, men, because you can't just isolate it to women. It impacts everyone. You know, it is an inclusive conversation, and the more that we can all open up about it, the greater it is. But when we look at this form of judgment and this superficial conversation, I always come back to, you know, hearing women, they don't have enough time for anything that feels substantial. You know, they've just about got time to wake up in the morning, get the kids to school, get to work, do what they need to do, get home, make a dinner. You know, we only ever really feel like we're scratching the surface. And this is like what I'm privy to when people tell me how they're feeling about their day-to-day lives. You know, there is no sustenance. It just feels like you're constantly chasing your tail. And so, you know, my question to you is, how do you keep it all together? We spoke on email about talking about well-being in the political landscapes and policies that directly impact women. But how do you do this, Jo? How do you bring this all together?
Well, I don't always manage it. I'll be quite honest. There are days when I simply don't manage it, where I have a proper wobble and think, I'm not feeling it today. And I think it's because you're right, we're spinning that many plates. And you know what I realised so the menopause hit me at age 50. I didn't have a clue. Instead of thinking, oh, my periods are getting more erratic and more problematic, I put it down to stress at work. Didn't even register it was the menopause. My anxiety was that disabling, I could barely leave the house at times. I couldn't speak, and a lot of my role is public speaking. I would just literally freeze in a room. When eventually the menopause was discussed with me, and it took me several battles with GPs and other professionals to get what I needed, there's the bit about, as I am now older and a little wiser, I know that I need to give myself permission to do certain things. But even now, I'm still terribly bad at that. I'm really bad. We're in the middle of local election campaigns at the minute, so it's full on. Polling day is the 4th of May. So we are relentlessly out, day, night. And sometimes I think, I haven't had a pee. I've only had a banana today. And, you know, I just think, and then I've signed up to do a half marathon in May, and I think, what are you doing? Why have you done that again? You know, so I don't always hold it together is what I'm saying. I'll be quite honest. And I think it's you know, hearing about things like Project Woman, that I then tune in and think, maybe I need a bit more spirituality in my life. Maybe I need to do something else for me. So I'm on a bit of a pathway and a journey myself at the minute.
Go on, Joe. Go on.
I was going to say, I think it's about questioning yourself, because I think when you ask yourself the questions, you kind of come to the conclusion that you need to do more. And that's kind of what I found with the whole menopause thing, because I couldn't find any information and I was listening and taking advice from my doctors, But when I started to question it is when I started to look after myself more. So it kind of all falls into place. I mean, I do admire you, like mid-local elections, and you signed up to run, and you have a child. Yeah, I'm out. Bye.
This is the point when the postman needs to knock at the door, Faye, and you need to
yeah. That's another story,
Sorry,
Joe. Don't
But it's that constant, and I bet you two do it too. It's that constant pushing yourself, even though you might be better at saying no than I am. I'm learning to get better, because I think you touched on it, Abby, before when you said, you know, only 100 years ago, women weren't allowed to vote. And you think of what the suffragette movement achieved, but we're still having to prove ourselves. And in a political world, I still feel that I've got to prove myself. You know, that men just do it. They'll go for a role and they'll be like, yeah, I can do that. I still feel that I've got to prove myself, prove that female intelligence, prove that, you know, that I've got the tenacity, that she's an aggressive woman. No, I'm not an aggressive woman. I'm assertive. I will tell you things as they are. I will question you. I won't just roll over and accept those things. But it's the labels that are put on women like me when we dare to challenge or dare to do. Yeah, exactly that.
Do you know what, Joe? One thing that I find is becoming more and more is women seeking permission. They don't even realise that they're asking for it. They don't even realise that they're seeking it, but they're waiting for permission. You know, this highlighted this to me when the government said no to the menopause leave. And so many women got angry. And I thought, why are we still waiting for someone to tell us how we can look after ourselves? You know, this is what Project Woman's all about. Don't wait for someone to tell you how to be healthy. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to take the time off. And people look at me and go, well, that's easy for you to say, because no, it ain't. It's not easy for me to say. I'm working with my own constraints and conflicts that come from the past. But what I know deep and inherently within my body is that my health is number one. And I do not want to head into perimenopause. I'm coming up 42 this year and things are changing, but I am not going to suffer. I do not want to suffer. I fucking love my life and I love living, and I intend to do that until the day that I die. And these are the women that we call forward right now. You might be a little bit afraid of that mentality. That's okay. We're going to take baby steps to get you there, but do not get to the end of your life and think, shit, what have I done?
Exactly.
So many women think like that, though, and it frustrates me when I talk to women who are really struggling. As you say, Abby, take charge of yourself, make your decisions which are good for you. But there are so many women who will just poodle along and just let life pass them by, or won't speak up because they're just quite insular and they don't know how to articulate themselves. Joe, in your line of work, when you kind of first kind of made it to Westminster as such, what was your reception? What did you think before you got there? And then when you did get there, what was your perception of it all?
So I'm not at Westminster, so I'm a local politician. I'm a councillor. Okay. It's town hall politics. However, interestingly that you asked me that, because I went through a selection last year to be MP, because the MP in my constituency stood down, and it's a safe seat, Stretford and Urmston. So I went for the selection. And the Labour Party used to have all women shortlists, which was making it more equitable for women, but they've now gone. Because when you get to the 50% mark, they say, don't need them anymore. Well, you know what's going to happen, don't you? We're just going to end up in a position again where, you know, and that is the problem. So I went through that selection and I learned a lot about myself. It was very bruising, because you win some friends, but you also make a lot of enemies. It gets deeply personal. People say things about you. And the problem is with me, I'm fairly uncompromising when it comes to my values. So if I believe in something, I mean, I can be pragmatic in my politics, but I'm fairly uncompromising. I have red lines about certain things.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I am. And if that means I never progress any further, so be it. But as a local councillor, it was a baptism of fire at first, because like I said, I didn't expect it to get elected, didn't really expect to get elected. But over the 12 years I've been doing it, I've grown in confidence, I've grown in experience, and this is why my passion around supporting other women to do it, because it's, you know, to blag the Barack Obama thing, yes, you can, you know, you absolutely bloody can. And that's the thing, I just say to women, you're doing it all the time, but if you want a more formal role, clearly you've got to get the votes to get elected. But, you know, we do need more women's voices in politics. We just do.
I want to hit on this, right? You're already doing it. This, I think, is what needs to come out. Because someone said to me the other day, well, I think I'm quite happy with my life. I think I'm happy with my life. But I've got like this symptoms playing me up a bit, and I've got a bit of this and I've got a bit of that. And I think, but why do you want a bit of any of it? I want you to realise, I want to show you that you haven't got to be putting up with all these little bits and pieces that eventually lead to the bigger, horrible bits and pieces later on down the line. You know, we've got this real misconception about growing older or more maturing, should we say. And it has to be quite an arduous, painful experience, just like the menopause. You know, where does that mentality come from? You know, when we look back, we see that it comes from a mindset that wasn't from a female. It was from a mindset that didn't quite understand why women went through these changes and that they needed to be fixed. Well, it doesn't need to be fixed. What needs to be fixed is the environment and the society that surrounds it, to be more accepting of the fact that when you get to a certain age, you just need a bit more of something. And that's different for everyone. You cannot keep forcing yourself into that groove of push. It just doesn't work. And what I love about the perimenopause, and this is what comes up for me a lot, is this fire. Is this fire that says, actually, no, I'm not putting up with this. No, I'm okay to assert my boundaries right now. And this is the hand that I want to hold. These women that also want to assert their boundaries, but I want to pass that ladder to the women that feel that they can't. You know, it's, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So when I went through my experience of menopause, I'm still on that journey. And it's taken me several iterations of HRT and exercise and other things to help me feel better and manage my symptoms. So I ran these series of menopause cafes in the community, and, you know, they were really well attended. They were free, and I brought in expert guests just to speak about different options: exercise, sleep, nutrition, your relationship with alcohol. And the women at the end said they felt much more empowered. The problem I had with that, in the area I live, the demographic is predominantly white British women who are quite well educated and know what they want, but we just want a little bit more information. But Trafford is a really diverse borough, and it masks a lot of massive health inequalities. And my concern is, what about the women in Old Trafford? For cultural reasons, they might not even talk about the impact of the menopause on their well-being. What about language issues? What about cultural? How do I manage with community leaders to speak to those women? I used to manage a mental health service a couple of years back, and I very often get Asian women who'd come to an appointment, but they'd be with their husband because they couldn't get health appointments on their own. And I'd be thinking, I really need to speak to this woman on her own to get, you know, what's going on. And it's the same with this menopause, because women are living longer, but they're sometimes living longer with more chronic health conditions. But actually, if we have discussions about exercise and health checks, they could live longer in better health. So I don't want to target white British females, ladies at lunch, that have very open conversations about menopause and vaginal dryness. I want to have conversations with women in Old Trafford that wouldn't necessarily even think about those things. So that's my next challenge, really. How do I do that?
So how do you do that, Jo? What's on the cards for that? What's your thought process?
So we've got, so again, one of my strengths is bringing people together. You know, if I'll network, I'll bring people together. And there's a group of like-minded women in Trafford that recognise that we want to have a menopause wellbeing offer. I think I introduced you to Jo, didn't I, who's doing a menopause weekend. So it's a group of women, and we're just going to get in a room and say, okay, these are the challenges. This is what it looks like. How are we going to do this? How do we fix it? What do we need to do? Who do we need to bring in? Will there be funding? Who's our partners? So it's a group of women getting together, because that's what women do.
Yeah,
we get shit done. And that is what we do.
We do get shit done, don't we? Do you know what? Sorry, this is going off conversation completely. My mother-in-law has been down for the weekend because it's my son's birthday, and we was discussing the difference between men and women going to the poo, and how a man can take a newspaper and sit in the toilet for an hour
and just read and poo.
Yeah, and how my mother-in-law said, I used to be like, it was phenomenal. She went, how men could just go at work for an hour and they chat over the cubicle to each other, Ross. And she said, but women, she said, what is that? I said, well, again, we've got to look at what we've been conditioned. I said, like, this body was a sin. Like, you wouldn't share your poo with anyone because you certainly wouldn't show your body off back in the day, would you? I said, and also we don't have the time. This poo needs to come out now. I don't need to be sitting on the toilet. I don't have the time for this. Come on, Nigel.
You've got to in a 5-minute break and you think, oh, I'll just go now before I go on to my next thing. And that's the bit I think is, whilst it's brilliant that as women, we generally tend to get down to the actions, to quote the Pankers, the deeds, not words. That's what we do. It's what we do. But I do think there is a bit in that where we neglect some of the more emotional aspects of our well-being. We are so hell-bent sometimes on getting things done and fixing others. Well, I'll own this and say that I'm not always great at then fixing me and making sure I've got what I need. Reading for pleasure now feels like such a luxury. But I was an avid reader as a kid. My gran took me to the library. I loved reading. And now it feels like all I do is read council papers. And I've got a pile of books at the side of my bed that I think, I really want to read that. I really want to read that. But only I can control that. Only I can say, right, I am actually going to do that. So, yeah, I'm a work in progress, I like to think.
Look, yeah, but aren't we all? I mean, come on, I think we all are, aren't we? Definitely. Yeah, I want to come back to, we've spoken, obviously, Jo, offline as well. Coming back to opening up and broadening this conversation around feminine female health. And, I've got this real interest to take this into young offenders institutes and prisons for young women, because I just think, or I feel that if these women and females and humans with uteruses understood the hormonal fluctuations and how they could support that and how that has an impact on how they express their emotions, they might not be in the situations that they're currently in. And it's something that has been fizzing there for a really long time. I'd love to know, what do you think in regards to that? Would that be a possibility? I think you've said that to me before as well, that you worked with the prisons, didn't you? Was that?
Yes, I used to work in a women's prison estate. And you're right, really. And I think what tends to happen, women generally get short sentences. A lot of women probably shouldn't be in prison for some of the crimes that they commit, some of the sentences that they're in for. I used to work predominantly with drug using women. And, I'd look at some of the sentences. It was around theft, robbery, and so on. And actually what they really needed was those good wraparound community services that helped them get treatment for their addiction, supported them with their parenting, supported them with housing, helped them to look at those toxic relationships and the people around them. But instead, they sent them away for a short sentence, separated them from the kids and a whole pattern once they're in the criminal justice system. But yeah, you're right. I think there is the bit about what is the offer when it comes to things like rehabilitation. Surely women having the option to discuss their health and well-being and, as you said, talking about things like those hormonal fluctuations. And yeah, I think it would be definitely worth a conversation with some of the women's prison estates to say, well, you know, let's ask, what's the offer now? And, you know, I would hazard a guess, it would be the very basic of healthcare, really. Not really something that looks holistically at how women function.
It's all pretty basic, isn't it? Go on,
It
Phil.
is. No, one of the things I've been looking at is the homeless as well, homeless women. Because when I think of my own menopause journey, when I started, I think of those women who are on the street, and I just can't imagine what's going through their head. One, having to feed themselves and find someone to sleep, but then again, to look after their health, whichever way they can, while sleeping rough. And I just think the whole system's just messed up. It's just messed up.
And then there's the added vulnerabilities that women who are in the prison estate and who are rough sleeping, that added vulnerabilities. So the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls work that I do is about, we have to involve men in that, but it's not about finger wagging at men and saying, you're all bad, you know, because I get, when I use social media and men say, but not all men. Yeah, I know it's not all men. I get that. My partner's lovely. You know, I know it's not all men. But actually, if you want to be an ally in this, you will make sure that you say to your mates, that's not okay. That's really not okay. And I don't know whether you've seen the video that came out from Andy Burnham's team, the Greater Manchester Mayor, called Is This Okay? I can send you the link. And it's a 2-minute video. Girl goes out running, load of guys filming her for, you know, all that kind of language. And that's like everyday sexism. Everyday sexism and misogyny is not okay. So we've got to involve men in that conversation to call it out. You know, don't be a bystander. Do something about it. So some of the work I'm doing in Trafford is with an organisation called Men at Work. And they do work with boys and men to get them to look at things like relationships. You know, a lot of boys and men have access to porn now. We look at our computers, it's a handheld computer device. Kids from such an early age are accessing things which gives them a very false view of what they think sex and relationships is like. And then when they find the reality doesn't quite match up to what's on screen, then it creates all kinds of challenges. I mean, you know, I've had girls that have come to me harassed in the street from construction site guys, and I think they must have a mum, a sister,
kids,
a partner.
themselves.
In what world is that okay? So we've got a big piece of work around ending violence against women and girls, and that has to involve men.
Absolutely. Jo, thank you so much for joining us. You have such a wealth and depth of conversation in regards to this political landscape of well-being for women. I feel that we only ever see the negative as to what is happening in regards to our government. And what you've spoken of, you know, there's so much there. I wondered if you could leave a bit of a positive note in regards to the work that you've done, which, I mean, throughout this conversation you have, but is there something that you can leave us that makes us think, yeah, things are changing, we are heading in the right direction? And is there anything that people can contribute to, maybe?
So the first thing I would say is this: if you want to contribute to better politics, vote Labour. I'm always going to say that because I'm a politician.
That's a no-brainer. That is a no-brainer.
And then the banner's going to fly through any minute now. Here it comes. Go on.
Okay, so I'm always going to say that because, you know, I've been door knocking these last couple of weeks. People are fed up with national politics. I think COVID, the post-COVID world, has left a lot of very tired, fed up, angry people at national politics. I get that. Then coupled with the cost of living crisis, people are struggling, people are fed up. A lot of the positives for me are I achieve really good things at a local level. I change things for people at a local level that make their lives better. I can't always give them the answers they want, and I'm very honest with them. I manage expectations. However, just being involved in politics is a positive for me. Just doing stuff, getting things done, and engaging with other women and girls is a positive for me. And I still love doing the role. So hopefully on the 4th of May, I will be elected for another 4 years to carry on this work. But even just us having this conversation now has already started me spinning off thinking, oh, I need to speak to you about this. Oh, I'd like to speak to you about that. So I think the positives are the relationships that I make at a political level enable me to help changing policy for women and girls throughout the country. And I want to carry on doing that. So there's lots of positives. Don't, keep the faith is what I always say. Just keep the faith.
I love it. I just want to finish with 2 words that really stood out then from Jo was engaged and involved. They're big words, engaged and involved. Don't think that just because you're one individual, that's not going to make a difference. It will. Yeah. So get engaged, get involved, because you're welcome. You're welcome. Your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are welcome. Jo, thank you so much for joining us. Humans, thank you so much for listening. It's always a pleasure. We will be back really, really soon, won't we, Faye?
We will. We will. I was trying to think of some catchy catchphrase. It's lost me, but we will be back.
Take it easy, people. Thank you.
See ya.